Okay, YouTubers, space detectives, pareidolia police, and anyone else who happens to be watching this video, you're all welcome. Today we are looking at another Curiosity rover image, and this one is from Sol Set 170. Now this goes right back. These were taken in 2013, and there's some crazy stuff in this set. I mean, there's absolutely loads and loads of crazy things. But I'm just going to show you one or two of them today because a lot of them are a bit vague and a lot of them are caked in sediment and sedimentary clay and are actual fossils and things like this, but they're pretty hard to make out, some of them, as you would expect in the bottom of an ancient lake bed, as we have here in Gale Crater. Right, so this is the set, and in fact I've got the image up here. This is the one we're looking at. It's got a part of the rover here, just here, which gives us a bit of scale, but it's still a bit hard to work out. And the object we're looking at is here, by this kind of squarish looking rocky outcrop here. I did a gigapan of this, and basically looked at the whole area and then found it almost immediately, right near the rover. Now let's go to the folder I got here. Here's a part of the gigapan I did. Now what I've done is I trimmed it down because it was so big that it wouldn't load up very easily. It was a huge file size, so I've cropped half of the gigapan off, and this is sort of the right side of the gigapan that I've done. We got this ridge at the back coming along here, and we got this kind of squarish rock here, which is the one I just showed you in the source image, and we got obviously got the rover arm here, and other parts of the rover down here. So this gives us an idea of scale. Now, how far away is this from the rover? Not very far. I'm just going to zoom in to the thing that I've found, which you would have seen on the cover already, so you'll have some idea of what I'm talking about. Here it is. And what we have is an alien skull, or should I say, a Martian skull. We're the aliens here, not them. At least the rover is alien. If you can call a robot alien, I suppose you can. Here it is. You can quite clearly see it there. I'm not going to draw around it accurately now. I'll do that in a minute. Basically, it's just below this squarish looking overhanging rock here. And there are some other what look like skulls here, but they're so heavily encrusted in clay and sediment that they're almost impossible to actually point out. I have taken clips of some of them, but let me show you the finished item here. I'll zoom out of that. Here is the finished clip. It's a skull. Now I've been looking at loads of different skulls. Now I've been studying skulls for many years of all different species, especially humanoid and elongated skulls and gorillas and apes and that kind of thing, hominids, and I cannot find a match for this anywhere on Earth. Why is that? Because this is Mars. So anyone that tells you that this rover is secretly filming on Devon Island is talking complete bunkum, because basically unless there were like hundreds of different species of alien living on Devon Island, then I doubt it very much. And that's pretty unlikely. This is not human, it's not a gorilla, it's not an ape, it's not even a hominid or a proto-human. This is unlike any I've seen. Exactly, it does have similarities to some of the ones that I found in this area, but it's unlike any you will see on Earth or any on Google Images or any on Wikipedia or anything else. I've looked through some books, can't find a match. It's an elongated skull, similar in shape, overall shape, to some you might see from Nazca in Peru, similar to some that Brian Forster has shown on his channel many times, and that they've also been on Ancient Aliens and various other shows as well. But this has some quite major differences, and the major difference being that the actual shape of the skull, I would imagine initially that the skull may have actually come out to here, and the top that's rather jagged and I think is broken off. That's speculation, of course. I couldn't prove that, but it does look like it's broken off. You got this rather interesting curve here at the back. You've even got some detail here that looks a bit like an ear, but I'm not sure what that is because there's something sticking out like this. This may be some kind of headgear, or I don't know what that represents. If you look on the enhanced version on the left, you can actually see it a bit better. There's something here, perhaps an earring or some kind of jewellery or item. Now it may not be anything to do with this, but the fact that it's kind of fossilized to it means it probably is. And I have found on some of the mummified skulls and heads in the area, a lot of them seem to be wearing earrings or quite interesting items of jewellery or something. So who knows what that is, but you can see the teeth. Now this is pretty crude. This may be millions of years old. It may have been covered up until quite recently. And you've got the eye sockets here. One there and one there. That's not very good. Let's go in a bit further. There we are. So we've got two eye sockets. You've got the nose here, which is split into two, like this. There's the nose. Maxilla. We've got some very large, robust teeth coming down here, which are mostly missing and broken, but there are some. There's one just below it there. Let me get in a bit closer for you so we can see. Now, when you get in real close, of course, it doesn't get any clearer because it's a bit of a low-res image, as is always the case with these. But I'll try and do it anyway, so we can see a bit more of that teeth detail. You can actually see the teeth here. You can see a large one here. There's one here, one next to it there, another one here, another one here. And we've got interesting nasal cavity detail there coming up, bone coming up here. Not particularly pronounced brow ridges. Now, this does bear some similarity to some sort of hominid or ape skulls that I was looking at earlier, but it isn't. Now, if this was a gorilla skull, or perhaps something like a yeti, or perhaps something like a Bigfoot type thing, then these brow ridges would be very pronounced and stick right out like this. You've only got to look at gorilla skulls and, or even early humans like Neanderthal skulls have got much more pronounced eyebrow ridges, which come right out like this, are very pronounced, really, really pronounced. And this isn't particularly. So this is a humanoid, but with very elongated cranial morphology and very large teeth. Now this is kind of human sized. Working out the distance from the Rover, this is approximately human size, but a human skull would probably come to about here like this, or perhaps would be a bit more like that. Okay, so this is much more elongated. In fact, probably came right up here, like I said a minute ago. Let me zoom out a bit. It would have originally come up like that. Okay, perhaps, maybe not that much. Let's do that again. Maybe more like that. I don't know. That seems more realistic to me. So this is sort of see, if it was that shape, I would say this was a humanoid, but it's not. It's much more like the ones you see in Nazca, but it's more extreme and has more sort of alien attributes to it. In other words, non-human attributes. The ones in Nazca are kind of human, but they're not. They're not actually human. They're not Homo sapiens, that's for sure. Depending on what you mean by human, of course. Now, I use the word humanoid loosely, and that basically means probably a bipedal, upright walking, intelligent being with human characteristics, with binocular vision. In other words, two eyes, two forward-facing eyes, and similar sort of physical traits, but not the same, okay? I'm not saying this is human. This is a Martian of some sort, and it doesn't quite fit anything that I can find online. I've looked up alien skulls, and I just, when you go on Google Images and look up alien skulls, for instance, you just get a load of my stuff that I found on Mars. And stuff that other people have found on Mars as well. Loads of people have copied my stuff, like this one here. And this is one of my early posts that other people also copied as well. Here's one of my videos here. This is not a humanoid, this is more like a small horse or mammal of some sort. And in fact, this one actually made it into Huffington Post. I've got it up here years ago. This is 2014. I'll put a link to this below so you can read it. It's a bit of a laugh, this one. They've really trying really hard to persuade the viewer that this is not a skull and that it's just pareidolia. Yeah, which is what they always do. And in fact, if I sent this one to them now, they probably wouldn't even publish it. So they're actually cracking down on this stuff, the mainstream media. And I've got no affiliation with the Huffington Post or any other newspaper. Some people get a bit funny about me going on about various mainstream media outlets. I've got no affiliation to any of them. I have a massive mailing list. I send my stuff to all of them. And occasionally, one or two of them will publish it. And that's purely random on my part. I don't pick and choose which ones to send to. I send to all of them and let them decide which ones are going to publish. So there's the original image, and you've got a couple of other things in here as well. I'll quickly show you those. Let me show you the folder I've got. I'll flick through these very quickly, keep this nice and short. Here's the Rover, there's the skull at the top, highlighted, zoomed in, zoomed in, zoomed in, highlighted. In fact, from this distance you can actually see it much more clearly. When you get too close, like I did a minute ago, it's very vague, but you can actually see the teeth and the eye sockets a bit more clearly from this distance. And that ear, the thing by the ear is very odd. You can see that there sticking out. What that represents, I'm not sure. So, not a huge amount of detail here, but this is probably heavily eroded. It's probably been there a million years. Don't know how long it's been there at all. It could have only been here for thousands of years. I do think now that the major cataclysm on Mars was fairly recent, i.e. less than 20,000 years ago. In fact, I would imagine it may have happened at the same time as ours did, the one that caused the meltdown of the last ice age and the climate change on Earth initially, which would have been about 12,500 years ago. So I do wonder whether that was caused by a solar system-wide explosion, which may have almost completely destroyed Mars and also caused a lot of damage on Earth as well. So, as well as there being later explosions seen by people like Dr. Clyde Tombaugh as well in 1941, but that may just have been an asteroid or something, a large meteor hitting the surface and exploding. So there we are. So that's all I've done. You can see I haven't enhanced it very much. I've just tried to make it clearer for you to see on your mobile devices and things like that on the smaller screens. There was also this thing near it as well, which is right near the Rover, this thing here, which is also, looks like a fossilized person. Now, this is really odd, and what it looks like to me is a very hairy person that is completely fossilized. We have an eye here, we have another eye here, let's move that a minute. We've got a nose here, we have upper lip here and mouth, sorry, upper lip there, mouth, chin here, you can see the eye there. Now imagine being perhaps thrown into the bottom of a lake, or there was a disaster and you ended up in the mud and just drowned, and you were, this almost looks like he's wearing a helmet actually. But what I think a lot of this material is here is hair that's become in sort of caked and encrusted in mud and clay, and is then dried out and solidified, and you've got this kind of pattern in it. Now this looks like a fossilized person, but we still have nose detail here. It's all kind of dried out and shrunk, and you even got an eye here. Now I do think actually that some of the Martians, their bone material may be very, very different to ours, which could explain why some of these things are still around. They may have an extremely dense bone, more like dentine or more like dental enamel, rather than the sort of bone that we have, which is relatively soft, perhaps, in comparison. And I also think maybe their eyes were very different as well, and made up of cartilage and different types of material to ours. Who knows? But that would explain how some of these skulls may still be so well preserved, because the bone density may be very, very different, and almost like porcelain or very, very dense enamel, like you would get in your wisdom teeth, you know, much harder than normal bone like you would get in your fingers or arms or whatever, you know. That could be the case, and that could be one of the reasons that some of these things do survive. But this was a bit vague, and in fact, what I'll do is I'll darken it right down. Let me go really dark with that and see if it comes out. There we are. Now you can see the nose there and the eyes. But it's so encrusted and broken off. We're missing this side of it, and it's pretty hard to make out. But that to me does look like a fossilized person, just lying right by the rover. And of course, no one at NASA spotted it, because they're really not trained to look at these sort of things and decipher what they are, and they probably just don't have the time. The thing takes so many images, I think they just glance through them and just blot out anything that's really blatant, like a pyramid or you know, a car or whatever, and they leave all the other stuff because they're not trained to spot it or even contemplate that it's there. And of course, they probably have been told that there's nothing there, because that's how their training works. So there we are. So that was it, really. I'll put some clips of that in a second. I'll put a link to the that story up here. Of course, you can come along to my channel as well, ArtAlienTV, and check out some of my other finds. If you're new to this channel, do go back and look at some of my older videos. I've got hundreds and hundreds now. I've got well over 800, and there's loads of crazy stuff here. Check out the jug, check out the goddess figurine, check out the standing statue, which looks like a little kind of gargoyle, which is only about 9 or 10 inches tall. But it's completely stood there like a little person. Absolutely crazy, just stood there. So a lot of these things are really well preserved. In fact, so well preserved, it's unbelievable, really. But of course, the atmosphere on Mars is very dry. There's hardly any water. There's a supposedly quite a thin atmosphere with almost no oxygen, which means that things would survive for many, many thousands of years, way longer than they would on Earth. I'm talking 10 times longer. Do check out ArtAlienTV Mars magazine on Facebook. I often post stuff up here that way before it goes out on my channel. So if you want to see stuff first, this is the place to be. Okay? And also, if you haven't already, go along to Space Detective 1, which is my backup channel. I am putting new material on there as well, so check that out. Very similar to ArtAlienTV, but most of the videos are shorter and a bit more bite-sized. Okay, so thanks for watching, everybody. Links below in the description. See you soon.
It's a mystery, and I don't like mysteries. Give me a bellyache, and I got a beauty right now.